Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's edition of the Geeking Out podcast. I am the Athletic Geek, joined by the my Mark brethren this week, as we are going to go over our top 10 lists of who we feel are the top 10 wrestlers that never held the WWE Championship. And for a little context for this list, we are only talking about the WWE Championship that is lineal with Buddy Rogers to now what Roman Reigns won off of Brock Lesnar at WrestleMania. So we are not including those that won the World Heavyweight Championship when it was under WWE's control, or the ECW Championship, or the Universal Championship. It is just that lineage for that belt, which might make for some interesting choices. So this week, the Mark brethren that are joining us is CJ.
Yo.
And Easy.
Hey, yo.
Hey, yo. And that might be coming into play later. Who knows? So for number 10, we'll start with CJ. Who is your the number 10 that never held the WWE Championship?
Oh, we're going to kick it off strong with me. My number 10 is William Regal.
Okay.
So
yeah, he's one king of the ring.
he was king of the ring. He was a lord. He was all kinds of things, but he was never the champion.
And that's what's kind of interesting about that. He was never the champion anywhere or anything. You know, I mentioned we're not going with Universal or the World Heavyweight, or if they were, even if they're champion elsewhere, like he is like nowhere. Like there's gonna be people on my list that you're gonna be able to go like, but he did win it in WCW. But they did win it in the AWA. But they did win it in the NWA. But nothing for Regal, and that's. I don't know if that's like a testament to just like what a good. Because there's gonna be somebody on my list that has like that was known for having the role to get people ready for the next level, which is kind of what Regal did in more ways than one. I don't know if that was just a testament to how good he was at that role, or if just somewhere booking missed the ball with Regal. But I mean, it's your list. Want to elaborate why he's your number 10 a little bit more?
No, I think it could definitely be both of those things. For me, he was always just such a solid guy that never really had that little extra little push to get a title really anywhere, like you said. But he was always so entertaining. It like either way he did. He was over when he was a good guy. He was booed and hated when he was supposed to be. He was very believable. He's just an excellent wrestler, but never had the title. So there he sits at 10.
Okay. Easy. Who is your number 10?
All right. So I'm going for our modern day superstardom right now with Adam Cole, baby. When he came up to NXT, I was thrilled. I was like, holy crap, yes, he has arrived. Then here's where things went wrong. He was only an NXT superstar. Yeah, you briefly brought him on to, when he had his debut on SmackDown because, somehow there was some airline delays in Saudi Arabia, let's just say, to say the least. But how the hell they dropped the ball on Adam Cole's time in WWE before he ventured to reunite with his superstar brethren in AEW. This is just one that baffles me. We can literally do a top 10 NXT superstars who should have been the WWE champion. Like you had Seth Rollins, Dean Ambrose, Roman Reigns, Drew McIntyre, like all those amazing guys that came from NXT and then became WWE champion. Adam Cole is one of those guys that's they would have, could have, should have, but you fucked up. So yeah, I know we're going crazy with like the modern wrestlers now, but my number 10 is Adam Cole.
Well, it it's your list, and you're
I know.
free to
It's
think
my list.
that.
It's what I do, what I want.
Yep, yeah, that's fine. I don't want to get too super sidebarred because we have a lot of people to talk about and a lot of stuff to get through. But yeah, I'm not going to be so sure I agree with that one. That might be one where I'm kind of
It's all good.
whatever.
You
I'm
never say never either. You
Yeah, never say never.
never
Yeah,
know
see,
what
never
can
say never.
happen.
Yeah, now that's something else. You never know if he might end up going back there. I think
We'll
it's safe to
see.
say with quite a few of mine, and with quite a few of them for unfortunately,
Again, he was
all but a
Triple
couple of
H's.
mine.
Yeah.
All but a couple of mine are for very tragic reasons. Most of mine
Yeah.
are very similar to. I'm taking the slap shoes approach, is like with his top 10 that never won the NASCAR championship. Is like, hey, here's people that are probably never going to come back, that are retired or not showing any signs
I've
of coming
had people
back.
that they've passed on or they're just past their prime. But
yeah,
no, for this is one of Triple H's boys here. Like he
yeah.
knows best superstars that literally could have should have been. But yeah, it's a never say never. So if my list gets outdated,
that might get outdated one of these days. You never know.
We'll see.
For my number 10,
As of right now, the best modern superstar as of right now.
For my number 10, I am following CJ's lead and going with a popular British superstar, but I'm not going with William Regal. I am going with Davey Boy Smith, the British Bulldog.
Oh.
This, he was great, talented big man, but just never could. As great as he was never kind of there at the right time to where he could be world champion. When whenever he was tag teaming with Dynamite Kid, that was the Hulkamania era, and like nobody else was getting the belt then, especially not a British guy. He comes back. He has his big singles title win against Bret at Wembley Stadium at SummerSlam '92, and he was a constant, especially when in that era where business in the United States wasn't great, but WWF at the time, their international business was on fire, and Bulldog was very, very popular, and it surprises me they didn't do something to get Bulldog at least a win in England, maybe to, quick title reign there and then have him lose it back to, whoever, Bret, Yokozuna, Flair, Shawn, any of those guys, just while they were in England. It just surprises me that never happened. I thought he was always, good enough to be champion, especially with, like I said, with the international market. And then he ended up returning to the WWF from WCW in 1999, and they built up the story of he's coming back to get the one belt he's never held. He'd been tag champion, Intercontinental champion, was the first European champion, won the hardcore title that had been introduced in his absence on his first night. But just unfortunately by that time, Davey Boy's demons just really had a hold of him, and he wasn't the man that he was in the 90s. And it just unfortunately didn't pan out for Davey Boy, and unfortunately he's no longer with us to have that, like with Adam Cole, have that never say never. But, I always enjoyed Davey Boy, and it just always surprised me, especially as a kid, that, he never got that belt. So my number 10 is Davey Boy Smith. And going on to number 9, CJ, what have you got for us there?
All right, I'm gonna pull a shocker out of my hat right now. My number 9 is Sting. And if you hear me on the show each week, you think that I'm this huge anti-Sting mark. I'm not. Before this AEW run, I very much enjoyed Sting, all facets of the Stinger. He was fantastic. Unfortunately, he was a WCW guy through and through, and by the time he made it to the WWE and signed with them, it was way past his prime for a title run, and he never even sniffed at it. So that's why he's going on my list. Also, the shock value because everybody thinks I hate him. It's just him coming out every week and not speaking, guys. That's all it is. I literally hate the way he's been booked, not the wrestler. I very much am against him dying on national television. That's it. Very good wrestler. Very underused in WWE. He should have been signed a lot sooner.
You can blame Seth Rollins for why he never got a shot.
I won't blame Seth
I
for
won't blame
that.
Seth, but
I
I
would
was
blame
expecting
some
him to win
higher
that
ups on
match.
that.
I was
Well,
honestly
considering
thinking
he almost
that match.
paralyzed him with the buckle bomb.
Well, I mean, and
A
Biggie broke his
59-year-old
neck.
A 59-year-old man needs to go, don't hit me with a buckle bomb. I mean, I'm not trying to say that Seth is blameless, but
Well, I mean, clearly after all the things he just dove off of a freaking ramp, guys. I don't think the buckle bomb, like, I don't think he is one of the people that's going to be like, no, don't do that to a buckle bomb in the corner when he's jumping off things even after that injury. He clearly cannot make those decisions in good conscience of his health. Like, it may have been his spot to call now that we've seen some of the other stuff that he's willing to do.
right.
Like, I won't blame Seth. I'll blame some politicking and some hard feelings and other people being hurt about other companies succeeding when they were failing as to why we never got Sting as the champion. That's where I'll put that blame. He deserved it. He could have been. It would have been great to see. There were a ton of matches that we should have seen, could have seen, that just didn't happen because of that. But I won't blame Seth for it.
Okay. Anything else on the Stinger before we go to EZ?
I don't.
Okay.
Nada.
EZ, number 9.
All right, so for my number 9, this mostly might be because he was wrestling for other promotions at the time, but they still could have had an opportunity to sign the guy, make him your new face, and especially, the amount of promotions and accolades they put on this man baffles me. Not once did they ever consider, you know what, you should be your champion. And it is the common man, the All-American, Dusty Rhodes. Now, giving credit where it's due, he did have a great run with the NWA, Jim Crockett Promotions, and WCW, but not once when he was with the Federation, he ever won a championship. And I don't know, like, I'm the completely different generation, so literally, I'm asking you guys, why the hell was Dusty not a champion?
More on that later.
See.
Okay. So clearly he's somewhere on your guys' list. So I'm going to take it with that. But yeah, just at my 9 is Dusty Rhodes. It baffles me. So,
Okay.
but at least, hey, he is definitely one of the greatest NWA World Heavyweight Champions.
Absolutely. So my number 9, I kind of alluded to this guy when we were discussing William Regal a few minutes ago. My number 9 is Jake the Snake Roberts.
Wow. Really?
Just because, like, the fact, kind of one of those. Maybe in retrospect, maybe I'd switch Jake and Davey Boy, but just I really feel like Jake could have really done something both as babyface or heel. But he was kind of stuck in that role to get people ready for the next level. But I just kind of when I go back on now Peacock, formerly the network, and I watched him in 91 as the Trust Me character. Like, I knew about everything that happened, but never, like, witnessed it. And it was like, he was so good, he was taking me as someone who had who knew about what he did and shocking me, and I was just enamored with this Trust Me character that he, was doing. They turned heel on the Ultimate Warrior, and then put the Cobra and the wedding present of Elizabeth and the Macho Man, and just all these different things. I'm just like, this is a top heel. This guy could be champion. This could be, this could have been a guy for to send Brett after, because Brett was getting ready to become a main eventer. This could have been a guy to send Macho Man, him and Macho Man, renewing their rivalry for the belt, Undertaker for the belt, like all these different things. Warrior coming back and starting everything, just all these different things. I was just like, I know there was reasons why he left when this character was really getting going, like right after his WrestleMania loss with Undertaker. Uh, Jake was out of the company, but I just always, specifically at that time period, had Jake maybe had both feet on the ground and maybe could have done business a little bit better. Maybe we could have seen heel Jake as champion. So yeah, like I said, in retrospect, maybe he should have been number 10, and Davey Boy number 9. But I stand by Jake being in the top 10 at least. And now we go to number 8. CJ, who is your number 8?
So, we already said like, oh, more on that later, my number 8 is that callback. It's Dusty. And I mean, we kind of said it a little bit, so I'll just kind of give my opinions on it. Back to Easy's question of why. I think a big reason why is because he was brought in to kind of look like a fool. He was the big name of the NWA for so long, and he held the championship, but he didn't really hold the championship. We have a whole charade gimmick named after him, the Dusty Finish. For that reason, he booked the NWA for a good period of time. Vince brought him in, I feel like, to embarrass him, to show this was their big guy. This was their top guy, and look what a joke he is here. Look at him compared to what I have. You put him in the polka dots. He danced around. At this point, Dusty
Didn't
was
people kind of
awesome.
love that though? The polka dots and the dance.
Because Dusty was that damn good.
Yeah, Dusty was good enough to get it over. You put polka dots on Madcap Moss, and it's not getting over.
You put polka dots on Dusty Rhodes. He's like, all right, I'm like,
And hell,
and on
watching
Dusty's
old
DVD,
footage, the polka dots just look cool. Actually,
it's one of those things. It's very funny and very open to interpretation, because so many people remember the polka dots, and Dusty said on his DVD, like, whenever he said, I didn't think I was getting ribbed, but if I was gonna throw this back in their face. Dude, from the outside looking in, especially hearing in Vince and Bruce Pritchard and Dusty's side of the whole thing, like, do I really do I die on the hill of the polka dots like some of the other fans of the Dream? No. But do I also kind of see how, like, people that were, watching, the man that was, that had hard times, Daddy, back in the NWA, looking at him dancing around in polka dots with an elderly woman, and maybe not feeling that same connection. Yeah, I see where they're coming from. But yeah.
Well, literally, I think that's
More
the
on that
kind
later.
of character that the WWF at the time
And that
literally could have had.
and that was Vince and listen to interviews with Vince and Bruce Pritchard. That was their perspective. They're like, we weren't dabbling in those sort of things. We wanted, we weren't dabbling in the common things. We had superstars. We wanted people to feel like superheroes and bigger than life. And if we wanted
realisticness could also work too, but that's another story.
Well, they didn't catch on to that until a lot later in the game.
Until the social media was invented.
No,
not even the
okay, fine.
The grittiness was there, come the late 90s. It's just kind of when, and that's a whole other episode, but it's like, while the whole world was feeling grittiness in the mid 90s, WWF was still going, you know what we need? A clown! And not like a scary, like, clown from It, like a clown, like, he's funny.
Do you know what we need? We need a big chicken. that hatched from an egg
What else we need?
and a dead guy that
Hey,
wears all purple.
But that one worked. That last
But
one worked.
credit to the man that wears it, because
Yeah.
Maybe if Dusty Rhodes or Mark Calloway was the gobbledygooker, then that character would be in the Hall of Fame for more than just what it is as a comedy act.
But
okay,
back to Dusty. All right, if you're done with Dusty, we'll move on. But like, we gotta keep this on Dusty.
Back to Dusty. He, even with the polka dots, he could have been pushed into the main event title picture and had the championship, I think, even though he was saddled with something difficult to get over, even for their gimmicky characters. He was past his prime at this point, not always in the best of shape anyway. He still could have done it. It could have been done. It was not done. So that lands Dusty on my list, number 8.
All right. Easy. What is your number 8?
So my number 8. So on a technicality, he says that, well, he bought the championship. So there's your first clue right there. But WWE doesn't recognize his reign. So at number 8, it is the $1 Million Man, Ted DiBiase. Now, this is honestly your perfect villain. Just he loses the championship over and over, and he says, fuck it, I'm going to create my own championship. And honestly, frankly, not only it did work for Ted DiBiase, but on a realistic run, he still could have been a champion. Like, could he imagine the WWE World Heavyweight $1 million champion? I don't know. It's some stupid undisputed championship role anyway. But still, DiBiase really could have been the greatest villain to hold the title. But again, he didn't. And it sucks. So that's my number 8.
Okay. My number 8 is, you can call him the Rocket. You can call him a Blackheart. You can recognize his Slammy awards that he's won. And some people tried to call him a Nugget. But my number 8 is Owen Hart. I kind of go back to the time when we watched WrestleMania 10 as part of the podcast. And I remember saying, like, the two wrestlers that jumped out at me were Owen Hart and Shawn Michaels. And I ended up feeling like I got like the opposite reaction that WWE wanted me to. I thought Shawn was cool for jumping off the ladder. And I felt bad for Owen because even though he beat his older brother at the beginning of the show, his older brother still ended up winning the belt. And I'm like, that's not fair. Obviously, now I know the context of the story. It makes perfect sense. But, during that time, Owen was having a hot run as a heel. And they were actually considering possibly having him beat Brett at SummerSlam to win the championship. But they decided that it was best to keep the belt on Brett. Not saying that's right or wrong. Just that's the decision they went with. And unfortunately, after that, Owen just never really got another chance at the main event ever again. He was kind of in the mid, by the time he was kind of back around that level, Shawn Michaels had already made his run. So, towards the top and just kind of wasn't room for Owen. Then you had, unfortunately, when he botched the pile driver and injured Stone Cold Steve Austin, Stone Cold no longer had any real desire to work with Owen. And when you're going into the Attitude Era and Austin's era, if Stone Cold, and I'd say rightfully so, doesn't want to wrestle you, you're not going to be winning the World Championship anytime soon. The only, tragically, Owen would pass away in 1999. But I just can't help but wonder. He's kind of the big what if. It's like, what if Owen didn't pass away? 1 year later, the Attitude Era was still in full swing, but they brought in all these workhorse wrestlers. Benoit, Jericho, Guerrero, Malenko, Angle, all these different names. To where Owen could really show how great he is and be able to wrestle again, which was one of his strengths. He's very charismatic, but he had that strength. And then I also can't help but wonder, a few years after that, we're getting into 2002, 2003, when there are 2 world championships, and I just can't help but wonder, had like Owen been on the SmackDown brand with Paul Heyman booking, had he not, would he have not gotten a WWE title run there towards the end of his career? Unfortunately, that's one we'll never know. But um, for my number 8, I'm going with Owen Hart. And for number 7, CJ, who you got?
So my number 7 holds the one never say never for me, but I do feel like I had to include him on the list. My number 7 is Cesaro. I think that everybody, if you're watching this, if you're listening to this, you know who Cesaro is. You've seen his matches. You've heard about him in WWE and ROH or somewhere else around the world. He's very well known. He is a phenomenal worker in both aspects, even though the English is not his first language. He can kill a promo. But no matter how many times he got so close to that main event picture, they just never would put that belt on him. Any main title belt, either one, was never put on him for some reason, because I'm guessing some politics. Again, we hear things in other podcasts and reports of this and that. And of course, now he's been let go from the company, and never say never. Things can change. People can come back that were released. People can come back that say they'll never come back again. For me personally, I think Cesaro is kind of getting a little bit higher up in his prime years, to where maybe by the time it's time to come back, he might fall into the fate of a lot of these other people on my list, where the time that they got back and would have gotten the push just wasn't the prime time, and they couldn't get that push anymore. But even this last real big run where he went against Roman, he came from like nothing in the pool of people in the back that weren't on TV, and came out and in a matter of weeks was a believable opponent for Roman. And that's saying a lot, because we all know that Roman's on this monster run. So it just speaks to the volume of how good of a wrestler he really is, and how believable of a character he portrays on TV each week, and what a fan base he really does have, that he can come from catering to, oh my gosh, he might actually dethrone the god of WWE. So for those reasons, that's why I put him on my list.
Okay, makes perfect sense. The never say never part, the fact that he's still in his prime is what knocked him from mine, but I agree with everything you just said.
I couldn't not do it.
Right. Easy, who is your number 7? Easy.
Sorry, my mic was muted, so that way I wouldn't interrupt.
Okay.
Anyway, sorry. So for my number 7, literally going through all of his accolades, this one also baffles me. He has not held a world championship in the NWA. He has not held a world championship in WCW. And of course, he's not held a world championship in WWE. And I'm wondering, what the hell did he do to piss people off or something? Or was he just not booked right? So my number 7, Greg the Hammer Valentine. I'm just literally looking over everything and like, why has he never been a world champion? Like, at all, honestly. You hear so much praise about his career and everything. And honestly, when I just look on the realistic perspective, I'm like, are you really, really sure he was amazing back then? Like, are you truly sure you can measure him up with the Sarge, with the Warrior, with the Hogan? I mean, don't get me wrong. Like, I respect his legacy and the career that Valentine has done, but what the hell has he actually done?
Well,
not to be
I'm
disrespectful.
I'll follow up, because that's something else for me. I've always kind of said is I've never got Greg Valentine. Like, I hear a lot of my friends that are very old school and like, oh, Greg Valentine, and I'm like,
I'm the same way.
I
It's
never
like I
got
hear.
him. He was, to me, from the outside looking in, nothing more than a good hand. Now I will say this: he did wrestle in one of my all-time favorite matches against Roddy Piper at Starrcade '83, the very first dog collar match. So I can't recommend that enough. But like to me, Greg Valentine was just like he he, he was a good hand. He is Shawn Spears. He is Jake Hager. He is
The should have, could have, but won't.
Yeah, just there's something missing that keeps him from going to the next level. He is the R-Truth. He is.
I think that's probably what kept him, is that connecting with the audience. I don't think that he ever really connected.
Maybe it was
like
also the fact
others.
that he was in the AWF and the UWF, which were both horrible.
Well, that's kind of just more so about the fact that you got to make money, and there are people that are starting promotions. You're gonna laugh now, but everybody thought that AEW could be just like the AWF and the UWF. So there was a lot of people with a lot of money starting up wrestling promotions, and everybody that thought that AEW would be just like them, they had good reason to for a little while. But no, with Greg, he's a legend and I respect him. And he definitely, his wrestling style, especially in the old days, is a very, very believable thing. And they were really trying to keep kayfabe. He was very, very believable, and you believed everything he did. But on the flip side of things, he just didn't have that charisma to get to that next level. All right, so my number 7 is somebody that had that charisma to get to the next level, but unfortunately didn't do it in the WWE, and that is, well, what I would like to do now is to tell all you fat, out of shape, geek podcast listening sweat hogs to shut your mouths while I pay homage to Ravishing Rick Rude. Rick Rude is an amazing wrestler, and he never really got to showcase it in the WWE. He had that character, he had that whole monologue that I just did, only better and in way better shape, and with Bobby Heenan with him. And he's amazing. He's great. And then you find out how good of a wrestler he is when he went to WCW after that first initial run he had in the WWF. And you saw all the classic matches that he would have with like Ricky Steamboat. And, Rude was great. He's to me was part of one of the most underrated stables of all time in WCW, the Dangerous Alliance. I mean, you had Rick Rude, Bobby Eaton, Larry Zbyszko, Steve Austin, and Arn Anderson all in one stable. And like, everybody wants to like talk about how great the Inner Circle of the Shield is, and but like that, I'd take Dangerous Alliance over both of them any day. But that's another list. But yeah, just Rick Rude unfortunately got hurt at a time where he was really showing how good he was. He got hurt in Japan. He did get to hold. WCW had 2 world titles, and that's a whole weird situation that I'm not going to go into on this podcast. But he was fortunate enough to hold a world title in WCW and take that belt to Japan, and that's unfortunately where he got injured. And he's kind of if he wouldn't have got hurt in, I believe it was 94, 93, 94, maybe it was 95, I'm not sure. If he wouldn't have got hurt at that period of time, he got brought back. He was starting to make a comeback as a manager in ECW. Later, he was D-Generation X's manager, and then would go on to manage Curt Hennig in the NWO. And he was still involved. It was just kind of those things. Like, he was only in his late 30s at that time. And it's one of those I can't help but wonder, what if Rude could still go and he was part of the Monday Night Wars as a wrestler? What if, put him as the Attitude Era was starting to come in, and he could really turn that character up. What could he have been doing against Stone Cold or against maybe wrestling in D-Generation X, maybe turning on Shawn Michaels to have a program for the world title in the Attitude Era or something like that. He's just one of those big what ifs about being hurt, and then unfortunately, Rude passed away in 1999 at the age of 40, when there was rumors of him working out and trying to maybe make a comeback. At that point, would he have been WWE champion? Maybe not, but it's just one of those. If he wouldn't have had retired in '94 and could have went back in '95 or '96, I can't help but wonder what if with Rick Rude, and that's why he's number 7 on my list. And now we go to number 6. CJ, who is your number 6?
So for my number 6, I kind of had to go back to the same kind of thoughts I had with Dusty, but pay homage to the area where I come from. And my number 6 is Harley Rice. For a lot of the same reasons that there was for Dusty. He came to the WWE in a time where he was a little past his prime, but he was a massive star in the St. Louis area, especially. Harley Race is still, it's reverent. You speak of him in reverent tones when you are in this area.
Oh,
Easy, that's a heads up for you. We don't badmouth Harley Race. Them's fighting words.
I never badmouth Harley Race.
Make sure you don't
I'm
start.
just making it, yeah,
I was almost close to putting him on my list, but
he had some phenomenal matches.
He missed
and
the cut.
If you've never seen a Harley Race match, Dory Funk Jr.
Yeah, and something else talking about Harley Race. Remember just a few minutes ago I was talking about Greg Valentine, how you believed everything he did? This is like Greg this is you believe everything he did, and he has that little extra to be world's champion.
He had that connection with the people. You believed in him. He was just phenomenal. He had a connection with his audience. He was a fantastic wrestler. He could tell this amazing story in and out of the ring. He was just the best. And so for a guy that was that great to have never held the title it's just kind of sad. In the way we look at it now, obviously in his time that wasn't like it. The WWF wasn't what it is now. It wasn't the ultimate place to be up until he was, getting on in his age where, he went and he made some money, but he never had.
No, go ahead.
No, you're fine.
I said by the time Harley made that jump, he was he was doing like what a lot of wrestlers, are kind of doing now, which is just, hey, I've done my best work. I'm gonna go get paid.
Yeah,
they're offering me all this money, and I can't, stop. And Vince, again, with him wanting to make, we're superstars, they're bigger than life, rough and tough, and I'm going to speak to you very directly, and I'm going to talk about how I'm going to destroy and break your neck and all, all of that, wasn't going to fly in the, cartoony world of the WWF, and, right, wrong, or indifferent, wrestling got big off of it, and Vince wasn't having that, so they made him King Harley Race. And, yeah.
He even had to talk about the King gimmick.
But, yeah.
I allowed to ask, and what was the King gimmick?
It just like the King, but he wasn't. It was weird seeing Harley Race, while Jerry Lawler, owns that crown, and you can't think of one without the other. Harley Race, when you're used to very, very serious, direct, badass Harley Race, who, when he looks at you, he is not one that will be not one to be fucked with. Mick Foley says his favorite Harley Race quote is, "If I hit him and he does not go down, I am going to go behind him to see what is holding him up." To give you an idea on what kind of man Harley Race is, walking to the ring in a robe and crown like Jerry Lawler, which, hey, it works for Jerry.
It worked for Booker T for a little while, too.
It can work. Just not Harley Race. Just not Harley Race. But yeah, I agree with everything you just said. So, Easy, who is your number 6?
So for my number 6, you guys actually kind of touched up about him, but it's Davey Boy, the British Bulldog. This one is just one of the could have, should have, and just tragically never. So there's just like so much about like the Hart Foundation in particular that, only I guess one of them was really the champion of everybody else, and it just sucks, and I guess, off the ring, Davey Boy had been going through some stuff, and it is terrible though. So it just sucks, he died at a very young age at 39, and at some point, maybe we could have saw Davey Boy, progress into, maybe he could have been a manager when the Ruthless, or actually, you know what? Considering at that time, he actually would have looked like he could have been a champion by the time the Ruthless Aggression era probably arrived.
Very, very similar situation to Owen, where if he was clean in his prime and they were doing and they had two champions again, he could have very easily been a champion.
Or if Davey Boy and Owen, I'm just saying this off the top, I don't even know if they have been, but if Owen and Davey Boy were tag team champions,
they were.
He was. Fine, okay. I'm just seeing it now. But yeah, it's just, what more can we say? Davey Boy could have been in there, and also I can't believe it took them long enough that finally in 2020 that he was inducted to the WWE Hall of Fame. Like, guys, it took you that long? Like, I don't know what to say. I think Davey Boy is just definitely, like, if we had a list of superstars who are just gone way too soon, Davey Boy would be at my number 3, because I wish I would have seen how badass this guy was growing up. Yeah. So, and frankly, I think the SummerSlam match for the Intercontinental Championship, I think that could have been the best WWF Championship we could have had. I know it was Warrior Macho, but that ended in a count out because
Beans. It was
yeah.
Brett wasn't quite there yet. Brett had to leave the Intercontinental level to go to the World Title level, and that was kind of why they did it. We give WWE a lot of grief, but that was well done. Like, that was how you do it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But definitely, like, that had, like, one of the best match endings ever.
Oh, absolutely.
Although in a sit-down pin, I mean, I could have done it better, but whatever. Or did it differently, not better, but differently. Well, yeah.
That's
my
how
number
you do
6 is
unexpected. All right, so I'm going to preface my number 6 by saying I am by no means condoning anything that has come to light on this individual towards the end of their life. But
oh, Lord.
My number 6 is Jimmy Superfly Snuka. He was the top guy. Like, he was the top guy. He was the charismatic. He was the most popular superstar in the early 80s in the company, and they went with Bob Backlund. I'm not bashing Bob Backlund, but they went with Bob Backlund for whatever reason. If it was because of legitimacy, if it was because it was Vince Sr.'s vision, not so much Vince Jr.'s. But yeah, I don't want to spend a whole lot of time on this person because of what got brought to light at the end of his life and everything. But trying to at least just look at the art. He was the most popular person in the late 80s, or the early 80s rather, and I don't understand when you're that popular why he wasn't the champion then. And that's pretty much it. I really I don't really feel like talking more about him, but I feel like it's got to be said. So, and from that, we will move to our top 5. CJ, who's number 5?
So my number 5, we've kind of mentioned him already in some lists. My number 5 is Owen Hart. I put him here because we all know how good Owen was. He was fantastic. He was a Hart. He didn't even the mediocre Harts are still better than a lot of people. And that's just, you can be a Shawn Michaels fan, but you still got to admit that Brett is amazing at what he does.
Tell
Owen,
Brett fans the same thing about Shawn. Okay, go on.
I was waiting for that. I left you an opening.
Yeah.
Owen sits at 5 for me because there's a lot of what ifs with Owen. He was getting kind of rebranded and repackaged at a very tragic time, and what he really could have been. Maybe he did, if the accident didn't happen, if Owen had lived, maybe he becomes the top guy. Maybe he earns that. We talked about it a little bit in the next a couple years after this. They start 2 champions, and not long after that, for a little while, they had even the ECW championship. And while that still doesn't count on this list, maybe that gives Owen the push, kind of like CM Punk got a push from that. Owen would have had a real chance to shine had what happened not happen. Especially, Brett being out of the company. I think that kind of took him out of a shadow. Yeah, he and Stone Cold had their little problems because of the injury. I think eventually they probably could have worked through that, but time wasn't on anybody's side in this case. For what Owen could have been, had the accident not happened, I had to put him on the list because I really think that he would have been an even bigger star than he already was, based on his just pure ability.
I agree. All right. Easy. Who is your number 5?
So for my number 5, a guy that should have been given way more credit on his career, which honestly he kind of did, but also it's for everything that he has done for the WWE, how has he not been champion at all? And it is Pat Patterson, the first Intercontinental Champion, creator of the Royal Rumble, and a guy that literally should have been getting more out of the WWE. Like I don't know what I can say. Again, this is coming from someone who did not grow up with this generation. It's just a little sad. That's I don't know what it was, if they were just trying to promote other people, but or maybe it was the fact that he was openly gay or something. I don't know if
I don't think that. I mean,
was it okay. I'm not saying it's
well,
because he was gay for
yeah,
what
I'd say I think
I don't think he was super open about it.
he was.
it
He
says
was open about it with
he came out in the early 70s. I don't know if
he came out to people that he was close to, like Vince.
Yeah.
Vince knew forever. Vince and Jr. and Gene Okerlund and Howard Finkel and all them knew forever, and it was like everybody knew. Like even like people would talk about it. Like it was kind of like it wasn't like a well kept secret going into the 90s, but I do remember when Legends House happened and it was he actually kind of said on camera that he was gay. I remember it being a big deal to like the non-wrestling media, but like literally every wrestling fan's like, I've known that for years. What's the big deal? But still,
who knows. But
I
but
think
yeah,
with Pat,
like,
I think with Pat though, I think he was a lot more interested in just being creative though. I think by the time he was kind of there,
or maybe I don't know if
he
he was
wanted
like
to be
just
more creative.
fine at this
I don't
point.
disagree with the pick at all. I'm just saying I think that's sort of where Patterson was in his career.
Yeah, it says Patterson retired from wrestling in '84, and then occasionally, he would wrestle and such. But I think he could have been a great champion.
Well, he also got into the WWF towards the end of his career too.
Oh, for sure.
He did a lot before then.
Yeah.
So it might be a case like the rest of them, like it's just not in the prime of his...
kind of like a almost like a Harley deal, you'd say.
Yeah.
Like by the time he finally made that move, it was like, okay, towards the end of it, hey, I want to be more creative. Only,
I mean, he did.
could have got a few more miles out of Harley than they did, but that's something else for another
They
time.
got a couple, I think, title matches with him, but he never won because what it was Bob Backlund, and
Bob
then
or Bob or Bruno or
I think it was after the Bruno
or
runs that.
superstar Billy Graham.
Yeah.
He had a really damn fine match with Sergeant Slaughter in the Garden. Like it was like their version of an unsanctioned match at the time, where there's like no referee. It's just kind of a fight till one person can't go on anymore, and again, kind of going back to what I said with Piper and Valentine at Starrcade. If you have the chance to go watch Patterson and Slaughter from the Garden in the unsanctioned match, go do that, because that's amazing. But yeah, I see exactly what you're saying. Patterson was great, but maybe just a little too late. Maybe you could say.
Probably. Yeah,
Um,
he was he wrestled like crazy during the '70s. So I don't know. Maybe it was just he was already just past his prime. He just wanted to move on or something.
yeah, possibly. Um, but we can take some solace in the fact that a lot of these memorable wrestling matches that at least I'm not singling anybody out. I know you just didn't come from this tradition that CJ and I remember from our childhoods. You could probably thank Pat Patterson for putting that match together. So we take a little solace in that. I know Patterson himself would always say that he'd always feel the pride in seeing people like Shawn and Brett and Rock win the title, like and Foley, like, because he pushed for him so hard and always worked with them on their matches. He always you know that was him kind of living vicariously through their wins with those matches. So um my number 5 is one that's already been talked about. It is the American Dream, Dusty Rhodes. And we talked about his run when he was a little past his prime and, the polka dots and everything. But since it's kind of topical at the time of this recording, I'm going to talk about when he failed to win the title back in the late 70s. When Vince McMahon Sr. felt the need to bring the charismatic Dusty Rhodes from the NWA and AWA fame in Florida and all those different territories, and bring him to New York to try his luck against superstar Billy Graham. And was just recently mentioned on Raw with Cody Rhodes jumping back to WWE. Everything Cody talked about in that promo with him winning the match against Superstar and unfortunately being by countout, so he didn't win the championship. Like, all that's what happened. And the New York crowd was hot for Dusty. And going just off of that, like, I know Dusty was NWA born and bred pretty much. And the NWA, Jim Crockett Promotions, they needed, especially as the 80s would move on, they needed Dusty. And it's a good thing they had Dusty for, all of his ideas like Starrcade and the Great American Bash and War Games and all those different things. But to me, my big what if is, what if they just could have committed to Dusty a little bit more there in the late 70s, early 80s, and truly given him a run on top in I guess then it was the WWF. Um, we can talk about the polka dots and, the merit or sacrilege that was to somebody like Dusty Rhodes. But, to me, I just think about, like, what if they just could have, what if they just could have let Dusty have it for a little while there in New York and given him, shaved a little bit of time off. Again, shaved a little bit of time off Bob Backlund's, years long run, and maybe gave the Dream a run with the belt there before he would eventually return to Crockett. Just never know. And for all of that, and the fact that, a lot of people would say, like, oh, well, he's a Southerner and he's in New York, they're not going to like him. Bullshit. They loved him. They loved him. So, for that, number 5 is Dusty Rhodes for me. We now go to number 4. CJ, who is number 4?
So my number 4, we're kind of staying in this era of, long title reigns by their top guys and people just kind of falling really, really close in that circle where they get chances, but they don't ever win the title. And my number 4, I think, is a perfect example of that. He's been mentioned once. He did technically, physically hold the title for a few days, but he bought it. He did not win it. My number 4 is Ted DiBiase. That guy just oozed charisma. Mm-hmm. Even in his old age, we met him recently in Indianapolis. Just super connecting guy. Fantastically nice guy, but he connects with you. You can see it.
But not then.
He was not a nice guy then. No. He is the so side note, he did kind of inspire my crazy laughs. I have a number of them. But that $1 million man, that evil rich man character, I emulated that laugh often as a kid and freaked out my grandmother really, really badly. But Ted always made you believe like he could do it. He was dirty. He was backhanded. Even, if his tricks didn't work, he could legitimately beat your favorites in the ring because he was so good. And other places where he went, especially in the South, he was a huge star and he was the champion. But by the time he made it to WWF, he wasn't one of the guys that didn't make it in his prime. He was there in his prime. He could never get to that top level. He had amazing matches everywhere he went. Just Google. It's really hard to find a bad Ted DiBiase match. He's an excellent worker, and he paid a lot of attention to the people before him, during him, and after him. He studied, and it shows. So for that reason, he's coming up in the top 5 of my list.
Okay. Easy. Who is your number 4?
All right. So for my number 4, for somebody that literally has the perfect name, how the hell was he not also a perfect champion? And of course, we're talking about Curtis Axel. Of course, I'm talking about Mr. Perfect.
What do you know? We have our first tie.
Hey,
that is my number 4, Mr. Perfect.
Yeah. So like, this is once again going back to the logic on you book somebody that is literally called Mr. Perfect, whether it's somebody you would cheer or boo. He was never your champion. I mean, sure, he was Intercontinental Champion, which, yeah, obviously, like, one of the greatest title reigns ever. But how the hell was he never a world champion? Like, it is just sad. It's even more tragic that Henning would pass away from unfortunate drug overdose or intoxication, or just one of those two. But anyways, it's just really sad. Like, I remember literally watching Raw, and they talked about, or they were promoting his DVD, like The Life and Times of Mr. Perfect. And I thought, oh my god! Like, I legit, I've never heard of this guy, but at that time, and I thought, my god, he must have been amazing. Then, you look up his records, and like, huh, he was kind of crap. Not saying he is, but I want to look at the accolades of all the stuff that he's done, and it's like, How? Not even when he went to WCW, he won anything. It was literally a
He
U.S.
did,
title.
well, but back then you got to take into consideration because no, it wasn't crap. I'm gonna call bullshit there.
I'm not. I'm only saying, just hypothetically, I'm not calling him actually crap.
Well, no, he did when he was the Intercontinental Champion. Um, First of all, that belt meant something then. So like it was a good accolade for him. Kind of bleeding into my case for Mr. Perfect. Mr. Perfect was the victim of here is this top guy and he is the champion. Here is Hulk Hogan and he is going to be the champion. Hulk Hogan is the champion. And the only person who's going to take the belt off Hulk Hogan is somebody ridiculous, like an Iraqi sympathizer or a fucking Ultimate Warrior or something like that.
Or I
So
don't know. They're perfect. Like
there was a feud made there, and Perfect very well could have taken the belt off of Hulk Hogan. Probably should have. But the one thing that hurt Perfect the most was he got hurt and then came back as a baby, for a while, managed Ric Flair, and then came back as a babyface. And did a lot of great work as a babyface as the WWF was starting to enter that new generation era of the mid-90s. But then he got hurt again, and at the time, there were these insurance policies called Lloyd's of London insurance policies that would pay the wrestlers very well if their careers were over or unable to work. So
It
Perfect.
basically insured their entire body.
Yeah.
And so if you broke something in your body that didn't allow you to do the work that you had done before, you got paid an annuity that basically lasted the rest of your life. It totally bankrupted this company when they had started doing these insurance policies with wrestlers. But had he ever gotten back into the ring, he would lose the insurance money.
So he was, especially throughout the new generation, he was brought back to commentate and do some managing, and they tease like, oh, he's gonna wrestle Triple H, oh, he's gonna wrestle, Shawn Michaels. All these different things were happening, and I think that's kind of where it hits the most for me. And it's ironically out of the Hogan era was for me, as a kid, it was they're always teasing like him and Shawn Michaels wrestling when Shawn was champion. So I was just like, okay, hey, Mr. Perfect's gonna come back, and I remember being like, as a kid, scared because I'm like, oh no, I don't want Mr. Perfect to come back. He might beat him. But I think that's part of the reason why the title list isn't and has many titles because one was kind of in the area where titles were a little bit more few and far between. But number two, he got that insurance policy, and on top of that, he was getting like money for being a manager and a commentator in WWF, so he probably didn't want to jeopardize that. I know something happened with that insurance policy, which is what caused him to sign with WCW for more money and not stay in the WWF, which again, I hear stories that they were negotiating Mr. Perfect's new contract or trying to get Mr. Perfect a new contract going into 97. And I just think about, around WrestleMania 13, I still can't help but think like, what if we would have got Mr. Perfect in the Attitude Era and what would that have been like? I think unfortunately then he really would have been lost in the shuffle, but
big time.
Corporate champion, corporation member, Mr. Perfect sounds kind of cool, but yeah, Mr. Perfect could have, should have had the belt, but he was just a victim of the only people that can beat Hogan are either enemies of America, so America can come back stronger, or people that are jacked. And being an amazing wrestler, I guess that's just not good enough to be able to beat the Hulkster.
Doesn't work for me, brother.
Doesn't work for me, brother. But we're to number 3 now, and CJ, who you got?
So for my number 3, I chose Jake the Snake Roberts. If you know me personally, you probably can guess that Jake is one of my all-time favorites. Just the WrestleMania moment with Alice Cooper really cemented him in my I will hear nothing bad about Jake.
Funny sidebar story about that. Um, Apparently, when we were younger, CJ and I were both at an Alice Cooper concert, at the same Alice Cooper concert. I actually turned down going to an independent show that was about 30 minutes away from the concert that Jake the Snake Roberts was wrestling at to see Alice Cooper. So it's always, I did not go meet Jake the Snake Roberts because I was watching the guy that was his manager at WrestleMania 3 have a concert 20 minutes from my house.
Was it a concert in Milwaukee?
It was not.
No.
Damn
it. And I almost got to meet him because a friend of the family was a musician that played. He was backup drumming for one of the bands that opened for Alice that night. So they all got to take him golfing. And I mean, at this point, we're in high school. I had started my accounting stuff. And so I already realized that I was a horrible, horrible golfer. And they offered me a spot to like help caddy and stuff. I'm like, no, I'm probably not the person that needs to be anywhere near the golf clubs or the golfing because I have a dangerous record with golf. But that's still haven't made it to meet Alice Cooper. Should have taken the opportunity, didn't. But that's sidebar.
Okay, so it's official. We're gonna do a Top Golf day one day.
You don't want to golf with me, man. You're gonna end up with a concussion. I'm a fantastic accountant. I'm not a good golfer.
But more on Jake.
We're gonna go to Top Golf.
Goofy golf. We can do goofy golf.
Miniature golf. Yes.
Yeah.
No, I think I might tear. I can't English today. Let's just move on.
Yeah.
So Jake.
Yes.
So Jake, he's quite iconic for me because he was a fantastic bad guy. The Snake kind of offered this gimmick already to where he could lend himself very easily to be a bad guy. You know, we talked about the Snake being in Macho Man and Elizabeth's wedding present, and you know he turns on pretty much everybody with a snake bite, and the legendary stories of having to have the snake bite him first so he could let it bite Macho Man, and you know that's all good. But he was also a fantastic good guy, and usually the one that was ahead of Hogan to kind of get the bad guy ready for Hogan. You know, he'd lose to him so that Hogan could come in and win the day in the next couple of weeks when he hit the town. And you know, Jake obviously is not shy about talking about his demons. And I think that probably played a really big role in why he was the second guy and not ever the top guy or working with the top guy as a bad guy. But he was always counted on for, especially in the early days of Jake. Now we won't get out into his time elsewhere when his demons really got the better of him.
Right.
But in this company, Jake was always really depended on to work with people and see what was special about people, and his opinion was valued because of how good he really was at this business. And for that reason also, he makes my number 3.
I'm sad. Easy. Who is your number 3?
So for my number 3 is a really big one that maybe you'd think, you know, maybe an honorable mention. No, honestly, you look at his career and he's still active today. And it's like, you know, they really did drop the ball a little bit because they favored his younger brother. So my number 3 is Matt Hardy. And this is why on the group chat I was asking, does the ECW championship count? And of course it's a no. But this just baffles me a little bit here, where it's like, you know, Jeff as a singles competitor, you know, he was amazing. Matt Hardy was also a great singles competitor. So thinking back to like everything that he has done from the early days of WWE and then going to Impact, then back to WWE, and of course, like back in Impact, where his broken gimmick, completely, no pun intended, breaks the internet, and now being with AEW as of right now, it's still just weird that not once when he was with the WWE that he has ever got a shot or even getting a win for the WWE Championship. At least with Jeff Hardy, he's not just a champion; he was a 3-time champ. So I really get confused about this one. Why the hell was Matt never given an opportunity? Like, could you imagine? We had a Bret Owen. Why didn't we ever get a Matt Jeff for the WWE Championship, or even in the World Heavyweight Championship, for all that matter? This literally could have been a great feud that when they had at Royal Rumble, when Matt turned on Jeff, to one of probably the most lackluster Extreme Rules match that Matt and Jeff kind of had at Mania 25. It just really bothers me a little bit. So, but thank God, he has been an Impact champion, but, well, we're talking WWE here. This is one that they really dropped the ball on it. And we have heard that the Hardys, this is going to be their final run at some point, or who knows, maybe they'll wrestle until their Sting's age. And yeah, I don't know what we're going to say. Matt Hardy is one that was just heavily underrated and was in the shadows of Jeff, unfortunately. So he's my 3.
I mean, I always like Matt better than Jeff. I know that's like a sacrilege, but I honestly thought when they broke him up and we saw the Mattitude gimmick, I actually thought Matt would go further than Jeff, just because
version 1 could have been a world champ.
I don't know if version 1 could have been a world champ, but I definitely just kind of saw it as like, okay, he's completely distancing himself from the Hardy Boys, so that's why I kind of gravitate, similar to how Shawn did with Marty, in completely distance himself from the Rockers. But
I'm just sacrilegious saying this. Would Matt Hardy be the Marty Jannetty in this scenario?
No. Like,
that's what I'm saying. I was sound sacrilegious saying that.
Well, being a Marty involves a lot of like things not happening, and Matt's had a damn fine career. Marty did not.
I don't think there's really a Marty in the Hardys.
Yeah, there is. There hasn't been like a real.
Oh, even King Maxwell is probably more over than Marty Jannetty is.
I mean,
like, Matt's first child, for God's sake.
I wouldn't go that far, but I would say that Marty just never got his. That's a whole nother debate, but there hasn't been like a true Marty, I think, in quite some time. But now we come to my number 3, and my number 3 is Razor Ramone. Talk about like, this is a guy that, other than like a couple times, I know he had at Royal Rumble 93, he had a WWF title match, but he was just so entrenched in the Intercontinental title scene. And whether it was Shawn Michaels or Diesel or Jeff Jarrett, the 1-2-3 Kid, Goldust, it was just always about the Intercontinental title with him for the honestly very brief time in his career that he spent in the WWF, that it was just never in the cards for him to move up and become that top guy. He unfortunately, if you can believe it, Scott Hall Racemo's never been in the Royal Rumble ever in his career, because he was always doing something with the Intercontinental title or his standalone world title shot against Bret in 93. And he's just one of those, for wrestling to be as popular as it is today, I don't want to think about a world where Scott Hall and Kevin Nash do not jump to WCW to create the NWO. But it is just kind of one of those like, okay, what if instead of, sticking in the Intercontinental title scene in late 1995, what if they would have moved him up? What if he could have had another match against Bret, and, maybe once Shawn won it, they have a ladder match for the world title, or, something like that going on, and just it's one of those. He wasn't around long enough to find out what he could have done as a main event guy, and then even in WCW, when Hulk Hogan's in the NWO, Scott Hall's not going to get a shot at the World Championship, but as we touched on with Jake, his demons um, definitely got the better of Hall, and obviously got the better of him to the point to when he had a chance to make a return to the WWF in 2002. Um, they were too strong for him to truly make that impact, but I think he was as over as the world champions at that time, and I'm not not trying to knock Brett, Shawn, Diesel, or any of them, but like Razor Ramone was as popular as all of them, and he was on the Intercontinental title level. So for me, it's just like he was as good as his peers that had that belt. It was just timing, I guess. And unfortunately now, we'll never know. We'll just never know. But yeah, for me, Razor Ramon, the other guy in the match that made me really take notice of wrestling, sits at number 3. And now we go to number 2. CJ, who you got?
So I don't think number 2 is a really big surprise for anybody that knows me either. My number 2 is Ricky the Dragon Steamboat. I know it's shocking. Steamboat obviously is my number 1 all-time favorite wrestler, the good guy in wrestling, which is probably plays a little bit of the part as to why he's on this list. Is he unfortunately played good guy, really for the WWF in the 80s and the 90s, when somebody else.
Not going to say him by name.
No, I won't even get. I'm not even going to give him the airtime. Somebody else had to be the guy. But Steamboat was always there having just phenomenal matches, even when somebody else was the main event of cards. Steamboat lives on and probably one of the best wrestling matches there ever was. He had multiple fantastic matches for other world championships in the NWA. Everywhere. He went to New Japan for a while. He was always a good guy, which I think kind of detrimented him. But
He's one that couldn't be bad, though. You couldn't make Steamboat a heel.
You couldn't really make him bad. And even when, we kind of talked about this with Dusty, when they brought him back and kind of made him really gimmicky with the dragon, he still was very, very over with the fans, and he could connect with the fans, and you believed in him. So no, I don't think that ever turning him into a bad guy would have really ever worked. He probably could have pulled it off, but not to the level to get him to the top guy status. He didn't really even have any major injuries like some other people that made our lists, that kind of knocked him out, but he did unfortunately ask for some time off, and I think that kind of played into the politics, because he never really got much higher than the Intercontinental Championship. And it was when the belt meant something, and he is one of those guys that made that belt truly iconic. But unfortunately, politics and everything else aside, that's really as far as he got in this company.
Okay. Very well said. Can't disagree with any of it. Easy, who's your number 2?
All right, my number 2, we kind of touched up about him earlier. But for me, it's like, this is mostly just because, I'm...
Hello? Hello? We good? Oh. Hang on, I've lost... I gotta rejoin the call. This is fun, folks. We're having a little technical problem right here in the middle of recording. All
There he
right. Yep.
goes.
There you
Yeah,
go.
we're back. We're back. Yeah, we just had a little sound issue. We've been having
Okay,
that a lot lately. I don't know
I
what that deal is.
I literally thought like
It's
I was
on
on.
you.
Yeah, it's on me. I don't know why that is.
Okay,
Maybe
I
it's a
literally
computer
thought I was
problem.
on mute again. It was like, wait a minute, you
I
can
was
y'all can
like,
hear me now.
I know, I can hear you. It's fine. I can hear you.
Okay, take
Okay.
two. Pretend you didn't hear anything. Y'all just got amnesia. All right, so for my number two,
Thanos
uh, we
snap.
touched, we talked about him earlier, and it is Owen Hart. For me, like he's just higher up on the list, not just from the loyalty of us Canadians, but it's again, we talked about this with British Bulldog that it's the would have, could have, should have, but unfortunately, it'll never happen. And especially, how epic was he in the during the Attitude Era? Honestly, like I remember like I don't know whether no somebody did spoof him on. It was DX making fun of the Nation
Jason
of
Yep.
Sensation.
Domination,
Yep,
and
that was
I
hilarious.
forget who was the one that said like my nose looks too big or something. I don't know.
Look at
I
how
don't know
big my damn nose is. What am I, an aardvark?
I think I
who
still have that on a tape
who
somewhere.
impersonated him.
His
Was it
name was
X
Jason
Pac?
Sensation.
Hmm?
It was like a comedian named Jason Sensation.
Hmm.
Oh,
And he
so it
does,
wasn't
and he
an actual wrestler.
no, but he does like a lot of
Okay.
great imitations. He does like
Okay.
a good one of
Sorry.
his brother Brad. He does a great one of Shawn Michaels. He does a great Undertaker. He does. I saw him do a really really hilarious slash tragic one of Hulk Hogan.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
but
But
yeah,
anyways, back to the real Owen. Just everything from that his career is done. And when we were doing the watch party of WrestleMania 10, his match with Brett, it's like that was just damn amazing. It's just a shame of just what happened. With the Blue Blazer incident, and to this day, I really think that Over the Edge pay per view should not have continued. Like, you don't do that. I think that was disrespectful. It's really horrible to, continue a show after fans literally just watched a man die in front of their eyes. Like, that is not going to take away the trauma that they're going to live under, especially with Jim Ross announcing that died from the rafters. So, and I kind of hate, really going to hate the fact that I've not watched the Dark Side of the Ring episode of what happened to Owen because I just don't want to. It'll just take me back to like Jesus Christ, like this guy literally could have been a world champion entering into the new century, and it's unfortunate, and especially if we had him today, maybe he would have been an incredible, manager to somebody, or hell, you know what? As of right now, if we didn't have Brett for FTR, what if we had Owen with FTR? Can you imagine how insane that would look? Like, I don't know.
I don't really know about that one, but yeah.
Still, anyways, Owen, we miss you so much, man. I really wish I knew more about you. 27 right now, and all I know is just the memories that people will talk about Owen, and it truly sucks. And he is my number two.
All right. Well, my number two is one that has been touched on by the both of you, and it is the $1 Million Man, Ted DiBiase. Um, it was just kind of. I'm not complaining about Savage winning the championship at WrestleMania 4, and I'm not saying that, with how popular Savage was and the business that he did the year prior with the Mega Powers exploding, that shouldn't happen, but it was just such a. Especially in that period of time, the WWF was such a babyface champion territory, a babyface champion promotion that other than those few months where Savage turned heel and he was still the champion, um, a heel long-term world champion in WWF was unheard of. But if one person could have been that guy, especially in the Hulkamania era, it was the $1 Million Man, Ted DiBiase. He's an amazing wrestler, but he would cheat. He would use the ultimate power of them all, the power of money, in a way that Vince wanted things to be bigger than life and didn't want we're superstars, pal. We're not common folk. But the gimmick that Ted had is the epitome of looking down on the working class. The sketches they did with the $1 Million Man, where he's like, I have 10 homes and a pool in each home, but I don't want to swim in that pool. And him going to the public pool and paying him to shut it down just so no one else can swim but him, and things like that.
They're just so great.
It's cool that he created his own belt, but he really could have been, I'll even say, yes, you inevitably have to have him lose to Hogan, and I'm okay with that. That is a concept, but he could have ran with it from a WrestleMania to a SummerSlam, and it would have been just fine to have a heel run with the world title. A character that was pitched to Ted as if Vince McMahon himself could wrestle, this is the gimmick he would want to do. Why can't you make that world champion? And I guess again, it's just timing, and Ted unfortunately also had his career cut short, but if you ask Ted, that's the best thing that ever happened to him. But yeah, unfortunately, just no world title reign for the $1 Million Man. So before we get to our number one, let's go through everybody's honorable mentions, starting with CJ.
Okay, so for my honorable mentions, there's one person that was kind of mentioned before that didn't make my list, Mr. Perfect. I'll just list him because I had a long list to make the top 10. Razer was also another one on my honorable mentions list. Jessie Ventura. Technically, Andre held the belt for one day. He did technically win the belt. He gave it to Ted. But since it was a one-day reign and that was the only time, I listed Andrew the Giant, as he's now called on WWE television. You're welcome.
Oh,
have him on my honorable mentions. Ken Shamrock, Rick Rude, Junkyard Dog, Raven, Christian. There are so many people you could pick from every era that just never made it. But those are a couple of my honorable mentions.
Okay, easy. What are yours?
All right, I got 6 because again, there's just so many to choose from. So I had Jake the Snake, R-Truth. Yes, you heard that right. Given everything that he has done in his career, including becoming the first African American to win the NWA World Heavyweight Champion, how has he not been WWE Champion at this point? If Kofi Kingston can have Kofi Mania, how come we haven't had Truth Mania? I don't know.
Because Kofi's better than Truth.
But R-Truth also has great talent and not just a comedy act for the 24/7 belt. Anyways, also Mr. Wonderful Paul Orndorff, if I said that right, Vader, Hacksaw Jim Duggan, and while we were talking this over, I just thought to myself, how has Hogan and Jim Duggan never had the real, like, an all-American tag team? Like, come on, imagine the intro going, hi-oh, dun, 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 dun. Like, come on. I would have bought that big time than the Mega Powers.
Don't sully Jim Duggan.
Whatever.
That's why.
Anyway. And then my final is Samoa Joe. Like, so much potential you could have had during his WWE run, and you fired him not once, but twice. And that second time you brought him back, you could have used him for something. But as Max Caster put it, he was injury prone.
All right, so for my honorable mentions, first one for me is Brian Pillman. If he just wouldn't have been hurt whenever he eventually signed, who knows what we would have seen from the loose cannon in WWF. Harley Race, again, just kind of way too late in his career and bad timing. Vader, could have happened. Politics and him being unsafe kind of got in the way, and being unsafe with Shawn when he was not in the mood to be fucked with at that time, and definitely doing a lot of cocaine. Sting, just because, you know, I would have been perfectly fine with him beating Seth Rollins that night. The 1-2-3 Kid, I'm going with him rather than X-Pac because I remember one night watching a match with 1-2-3 Kid versus Bret Hart. It's an amazing match from Raw. Go check it out. Where you really thought the Kid was going to upset Bret. And I remember kind of thinking after I saw that, Kid's going to be world champion one day. It never worked out. Never really got that from the X-Pac stage of his career, but from the Kid, the 1-2-3 Kid part of his career, I got those vibes. So that's why I'm picking 1-2-3 Kid. Christian, just he got shafted in the world title scene in WWE, no matter what brand or what belt it was, unfortunately. Ken Shamrock, I thought he was going to win it at some point in the Attitude Era, but, nope. Nobody's taking off Stone Cold. Going to go with DDP. He's somebody else that just was completely misused when he was brought in, and maybe if he would have just had some semblance of respectable booking, he could have got a world title run. Paul Orndorff, again, he was a big foil to Hogan there in the 80s. Could have had a run. And finally, my last one is Lex Luger. I know, the Lex Express is a punchline to a lot of people, and I know that there was a lot, business was down, and you can't really say he was drawn. I hear everybody there, but OSW Review, shout out to them, a much larger wrestling YouTube channel than me. They looked over the Lex Express, and when they went and looked at SummerSlam 93, and they had the build up to him riding to that building and listen to the fans in the crowd, thinking he was going to topple Yokozuna, the story would have played out and been over that way. Would he have been drawing the Hogan numbers that they thought he would have? Absolutely not. But there's good reason that this isn't looked at fondly, but there's a lot of stuff with this that wasn't nearly as bad as what they said it was. And, at least if he would have just beat Yoko on that night and then lost it right back, it would have been just fine. But for that, I am going with Lex Luger. Now we go to our number one, and I'm confident it's going to be the same between two of us. Maybe not all three, but
No, I'm pretty confident. I know who our number one is.
All right, so CJ, say it, and then we'll come in if it's ours too. CJ, who's your number one?
My number one is the rowdy one, Roddy Piper.
Yeah.
Yep, Roddy Piper across the board.
Number one.
Yep.
That's the second straight show we've had where we have the same number one.
Number one across the board.
I don't know very many people that would ever argue that he doesn't deserve the number one in this spot.
He was as over as Hogan. And he was as important to the success of the WWF as Hulk Hogan. Period. I'm not even saying that as a dislike of Hulk Hogan. I'm saying that you needed Hulk Hogan to fill his role, and you needed Roddy Piper to fill his role. And then also, when Roddy Piper turned to the good side of things, didn't really miss a beat.
No.
Except for the fact that he was a babyface at the same time Hulk Hogan was a babyface. That's it. The only that's the only thing that kept him from being world champion was it was a babyface territory, so they weren't going to have Hulk lose to him, at least not that time. And then whenever he turned face, it was the Hulk Hogan show. But I don't really know where you would have worked it in, but it could have worked. It should have worked.
But even without it, all the people in our list they all have their own place in the history and their own legacies. Piper stands above a lot of people with no title reign.
Yeah.
He influenced a lot of what we see today. Dare I say, and this might be a heel comment from me and about Piper, I don't think that we have sports entertainment in the way we do today without Piper.
No.
He was a sports entertainer before it was, a dirty word to say in the wrestling community. He was a thoroughly entertaining person and just an absolute icon.
Yeah.
And just really tragic, I guess, just as even after his career, that's some failing health issues, and then even what's more haunting is in a 2003 interview we had with Real Sports that he feared he was not going to make it past 65, and then lo and behold, he passed away at 65. It's it's a little unfortunate about what the heck does WWE really do on protecting their legends, supposedly. Roddy
Well,
obviously
I mean that's a whole debate for another day.
yeah, I guess. But
But
for real though,
I'm gonna say, after that Real Sports interview, Piper be the first to tell you, he did hard living on his own even before the WWF. And that's not me saying that WWE could not do more. Yeah. That's just me saying.
And also, of course, anytime you hear the Green Hills of Tyrol, nobody thinks of that song as it's a Scottish song. Everybody knows it as that's Roddy Piper's song.
Or a Scottish soldier, as it used in WCW.
True, but anytime I hear the Green Hills of Tyrol, I just think, oh yeah, I'm just looking for anybody to walk out in a Rowdy shirt, and it just I honestly have a huge love for bagpipes, all because of Roddy. But not just because I have a music teacher for dad, and I think bagpipes are awesome.
Before then, but
so that song
made it better.
But so that song just in general is just amazing, and it's just a shame, you seriously need to go into the mindset of why the actual hell was he never a champion? If it's because, well, he was the villain. Villains don't win. It's like, okay, but not all stories need a happy ending. And especially just the legacy that Piper have had, we would not have villains like The Miz for WWE, or hell, even for AEW, we would not have an MJF.
You could say that
Piper set the standard on how to be hated.
Yeah. But,
well, for me,
he was so good that he could be that beloved and that hated just like that.
Yeah.
I don't. I might be proven wrong, but I don't foresee The Miz being as beloved as what Roddy was,
I'm just talking about bad
MJF or any of them. I don't foresee any of them. That's not me knocking. I don't see either one of those guys that are kind of this era's Piper. Being able to be as diverse, and that's what made Roddy so
when
special.
They're on the microphone. I'm not talking about wrestling and performance-wise. I'm talking when they are talking.
Yeah, I stand by that. That's exactly what I mean.
Can be said with John Cena as the Doctor of Thugonomics, or honestly with Rock and Austin, whether you want to love them or hate them.
But yeah, Piper. Probably the best comparison you can make to Roddy Piper is he is the Dan Marino of wrestling. He is the one that never got the championship, but yet so many people rank him incredibly high in the list of, top 10 all-time anything. And, people are like, well, Dan Marino never won a Super Bowl. Yeah, that's how good he was. That's kind of the same thing with Roddy Piper. When you list the top 10 wrestlers, you're going to hear Hogan. You're going to hear Flair. You're going to hear, Austin and Rock and Taker and Brett and Shawn and Steamboat. And Piper's going to be there, and he's the only one that never held a world title. That's how fucking good he was. So, yeah.
Small story, and then don't worry, we'll wrap it up. I remember I was working at summer camp in Three Rivers, Michigan, and my phone did the did-a-do, and I see a notification that Hot Rod had passed away, and I was just in complete shock, and I'm like, holy shit. Like I was legit just so sad that he's definitely a legend that I really wanted to meet at one
Same.
point. And even my
That
even
was a
my
big one for me, as I
dad,
never got. He's like one of my favorite wrestlers that I.
yeah,
Yeah.
He did
and
all the conventions, and I was starting to get into being adulthood where I could spend money and do that kind of thing, and
yeah.
unfortunately he passed before I could ever catch him at one of
And
those Legends
I even
fests.
told my and I even shared the news with my dad. Like, and keep in mind, my dad never really watched wrestling, as much, and more less of my parents kind of tried to keep it away from me. But no, I shared the news with my dad, and even he was actually sad because, he did watch like stadium wrestling as a kid, or was it teenager, one of those two. But he knew who Hot Rod was. He was a celebrity icon, and especially with one of the most iconic movie lines, "I came here to kick ass, chew bubblegum, and I'm all out of bubblegum." So even Roddy, you know what? Honestly, I think he's a better actor than Hogan. I'm gonna
Oh,
go ahead
that's
and
not
say that.
saying much.
That's leaps and bounds.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's the truth, but that's like saying,
It's
hey,
not hot.
yeah, that is sort of like saying, like, oh hey, I didn't get cut with the chainsaw today, so I guess it's a good day. Um, yeah, nothing else
Do
can
you
be
think
said.
Suburban Commando should get a remake, or
I
Mr. Nanny?
Mr. Nanny
No.
with the right person could be funny. I will say that. But
MJF.
no,
True cut.
no, don't put that hot rod ripoff in here. Heyo. That's gonna piss. That's gonna
Hey
piss.
now.
That's gonna piss off some. It's gonna piss
Hey,
off
at
some
least
AEW
MJF
fans.
was a pretty convincing Ralphie for when AEW was, recreating Christmas Story.
Yeah, I just like how now I did a little. Now I just do it by putting. I normally do it by just putting out my opinions, but now like I'm really pissing off some of the other AEW fans, going like, "What? I can't believe you would say Roddy Piper is better than MJF." So we're gonna have that. Gonna end on that, but we want to thank everybody for having a listen. If you enjoyed, please give it a like, share, subscribe for more content. Check us all out when we talk about current wrestling events, including things like is MJF better than blank on our normal live streams, the Just Us Marks live streams. But yeah, thank you for listening to our opinions. Let us know your top 10 in the comments section below, or tweet it at me at athletic_geek89 along with your "hey, fuck you for thinking anything is better than MJF" comment. And we'll see you
Or
next time.
MJF will just find you anyway.
Maybe. He might. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see you next
If he
time.
finds us, then we don't have to pay like the $400 to meet him.
That's true.
Fine.
That's true.
Hey!
We're getting
Just when you think you know the answers, I change
Wait,
the question.
I'm
and that's how we're ending it. Have a good one.